Hey, I'm Matt from the Code Hub. Welcome back to Coding at Home. We're going to be going through some more assemble your camera stuff today with a little bit of a special focus on how we might build an app of our own using some of these components inside the assemble your camera playground. There's also another playground called Camera Create in the template section that will help us build off of the existing blocks that we've been using so far with the assemble your camera and lights camera code. So we're going to go through those things that might help you for your submission if you're thinking of submitting something to Swift Student Challenge for WWDC 2020. It's due Sunday, so you better get moving. But we'll show you a little demo app and you can maybe see where you would take it further from here. And if you're not ready for this year's, maybe you're ready for next year's because they tend to do the same kind of challenge, build a Swift playground, make it an interesting application and an interactive experience, and you just show off your skills. Quick note about tomorrow, we won't be live streaming, we'll be on the Zoom call, so if you're interested in joining us for our beginner session, please go to the URL listed on the screen right now, and that'll be in the description. You can sign up for the session. The only reason we ask you to do that is so that we can send out the Zoom details and we don't have to broadcast it everywhere. We also then have an idea of who we have on and what knowledge you have so far. So if you're interested in joining us and you're finding the live sessions a little bit too intense, a little bit too far down the line, or you just want a refresher, we go back over a lot of things that we've covered throughout the last 36 days in the Friday session. So we'll be working with the Hello Byte Playground again, and we hope to see you tomorrow at 1 Irish time. All right, with that, let's start checking out assemble our camera and go back to the playground. All right, so here we go. We're in Swift Playgrounds. We've got our assemble our camera copy where we left off yesterday. We were on the zoom slider screen. If we hit run my code, we'll see what we have. We'll let it use the camera. Okay, cool. We left off yesterday. We have this button works back and forward. We can take pictures. We can zoom in. We can zoom out. Everything's all hooked up. We used what's called an event handler to handle when the slider value changes here. So we wrote a function called on slider value changed, and it takes a value, which is a double. And then we basically set the zoom property on the camera view to that value that we got passed in, which is between negative 0.5 and 0.5 to 0.5. So the zoom will go from 0 to 1 on our camera view. And where we connected that was up here in the initializer. We said zoom slider has a property called value changed, and we can connect that to this on slider value changed function that we wrote. And we also did this, we also hooked up this button here as well. So that kind of finishes off our camera. If we look at the table of contents, the next thing we're going to take a look at is the app class. Now, before we do that, I want to show you how this kind of code that you wrote here could be really useful towards your Swift Student Challenge project. So if I hit the X button here and close out of that playground, I downloaded a blank Camera Create playground. So if you go to see all, there's a starting point section. So there's a blank one, there's an AR Create, Camera Create, Sonic Create, and we'll get into some of these later in our sessions. Answers, which we've played around with. Puzzle World. So what I did was I downloaded a Camera Create starting point. So if I open up mine, if you want to download it yourself, you're welcome to follow along. If that's going to be your project that you're working on for WWDC and the Swift Student Challenge, that's awesome. Let's download it and you can play around with it. So what I did was you start out with a template page here where you have a space, you have a camera, you add the camera to the space, and then you start the camera. We've seen all of this before. So if I hit run my code, I could say, yep, you'll access the photos. Yep, you'll access the camera. And there we go. We have our good old Swifty camera in the plain style. Not super exciting. And maybe I don't want to build a camera app for my submission to the Swift Student Challenge. So I'd hit stop. What you can do with this template and this starting point is really nice because you can go up here and tap on the arrow and there's an edit button. So if you say edit, you can change the names of these, you can reorder them. What I did was I hit the add page button and it created a new playground for me that's basically a copy of the template playground page. So I had a camera in there, I had the camera being added to the space, and I started the camera. So this is what I did. I was just goofing around with it and to show off what we could do with the components we have so far. So we have our space. I didn't change that. I added a few different components. So I added a background. I added a button. And I gave it an image. I added a fish, which was also a button. Didn't need to be a button. It could have been an image view because I don't hook it up to anything. I styled the component, so I gave the button a border color and a width and a corner radius. And then I defined a function for what I want to have, what code I want to have run when the button is pressed. So this move action. And you remember when we hooked up the front back button, we wrote a function that had a parameter called pulse that was of type pulse, because that's the event that gets sent to us from the button. And inside this function, I changed the position of the fish. So even without having seen this playground, you might be able to guess what's going to happen here on the screen. But what I do is I say, so fish.position is equal to, and then I create a new point with a new initializer. So point X is, and then I take the fish's position now, the X position, and I do -10. So the really cool thing about this position type is that you can access the property X on it by using dot notation. Like I did here, fish.position.x -10. So who can guess what that's going to happen? The position is going to change. If I'm at 0 and I do -10, I'm going to move back here. And then I keep the Y position as the same as the current fish's Y position. Once I've defined this function, I can then hook up my button pressed property to this move action. So that's all of that stuff wired up. So my button will call a function and then the function will move the fish's position. And then what I do here is I add the background at a certain point with a certain size. I add the fish at a certain point. And then I add the button at a certain point with a certain size. So let's run my code and see what we have. And I'm going to tap on this middle thing. This is fine. We can tap on the button now and move the fish. But if I really get the full benefit by opening it up wide, if I go tap on this button, I can see I'm changing the fish's position every time I tap on it. Now, you could see how if I added another button, maybe with another arrow facing the other way, and I hooked it up to a move right action, which would be a function that I'd define, and I would change the X position by +10, the fish would start to move this way. So you can actually write a game where you have a fish on the screen try to avoid bubbles or tries to navigate a maze or something. With not a lot of code. If we look at the code that we wrote here, this isn't a lot. This is way less than you've written already. And the images from this, I just took this image here, came from our images library here. It just came from one of these images. And then I didn't have a good arrow image. So I said, well, I want to create one of those. So a really handy place to generate images that look like this is to go off to Keynote. So we'll play around with Keynote a little bit more, but I'll just show you it's very easy to go in here, hit the plus button, or actually I'll create a new blank page. There's a new blank page. Now I want to make sure the background's transparent. So you saw that I had trouble with that with Sketches, the regular version, the free version yesterday, because you have to upgrade to get transparencies. So I can actually change the style of this background by hitting the brush button. And then I can change the background color here to no fill if I want it to be transparent. And now if I want to drag out, I can drag out, Keynote has a great library of shapes. So I would hit the plus button here. And this tab here will show me all the shapes. So there's my basic ones. There's some geometric ones. Here's some objects that I can add. Or some animals. Nature images. Food. So I could do a food-based game. All right, so my donut is looking kind of unseeable at the moment, but if I tap on the brush, I can change the color to blue or green, or I can change the fill here to be something more sophisticated. And now that I have my image on a transparent background, I go up to these three dots and I can hit export. And I have an images option here. Now, if I only want to export my new donut image, I can export it as a PNG, which will preserve the transparency. If I export it as a JPEG, I'll get a black background. I can change the slide range to be just slide 3. If I hit export, it'll ask me, well, do I want to save the image? I want to save the image. So now if I go back to my Swift Playground, because I've saved that image in my photo library, if I tap on the fish and I say, do you know what? I love this aquarium game, but maybe I'm not great with fish. I want to go to my photo library. And I'll go to my recently added. And here I have my donut. So now if I hit run my code, I've got a really tiny donut that I can swim through the sea. That's just a quick way to throw together an app and get some elements into your app that make it look half decent. Now maybe this is stretching half decent a little bit. But this is a really good starting point for building your own app and starting to experiment with the beginning look and feel of your application. Once we're done with the Assemble Your Camera Playground, we're going to go into prototyping in Keynote a little bit more. We'll have a session on that. But this is just a quick demo of what you could do with Swift Playgrounds in terms of an application. I'll add this to the Code Hub Playground feed later today. So if you do have Swift Playgrounds up and running and you have subscribed to our Playground feed, you'll be able to go to see all, scroll down to our feed, and it'll show up in this list here, probably by tomorrow morning. All right, so that's just a quick demo of what you could do with the code we've already learned in Assemble Your Camera. So let's open that playground back up again. We've got a fully functioning camera, so now we're going to move on to your app class, which is the next chapter in this book. So first difference you can see is that instead of having the MyCamera class in the tab, we now have a MyApp class. And you can see it's a different type of class. It's called MyApp. It's got a colon here and then a type defined called app. So it's that's the superclass of MyApp. Inside here we have a property that's public called space, which is an instance of a space. We create some more components, like the camera is a Swifty camera. We have an image view. We have a photo album view, activity button. And then we have an initializer. So a lot of this code looks just like we saw in the MyCamera class And in fact, our MyCamera class is still around. If we tap on this file button up here, we can see that my camera is still there. And now I have a third tab here. They look very similar. The class name is different because it is a different class. It's going to do something different. It's a different blueprint. The properties are different, again, because it's a different blueprint. But we still have a initializer where we do a bunch of work. We'll have some other functions. Let's tap on the MyApp class again. We have our init class, or our init method class. And we do a lot of setup and styling there of our different components. So let's try running this to see what we have. All right, I'd like to access my photos and the camera. Okay, so we have a plain looking Swifty camera. We have an image view over here, and then we have our album view from the My Album Name album. Okay, that's pretty cool. If we look at the main file, which is the file that gets run when we start our Swift Playground, this is the only line of code that's in there. It just creates our app. So we can now keep all of our code in the MyApp file, and that'll stay the same across all of our playground pages. So that headache that we had where we always had to resize our MyCamera class instance when we added it to the space, that's not an issue anymore, because we can now determine the size inside the MyApp. And all we have to do is say, hey, let app equal MyApp. All right, so let's read up about this. So we're going to open the MyApp file. We've got the following components. We've got a camera. It's using Swifty camera. And it tells us why. It's because we still have to write code to give our camera an output so it can send its photos to other components. It's got an image view. It's got a photo album view. And then this is a new one. We've seen those other elements before. This activity button is a special type of button that'll bring up the share sheet. So we can share the photo in messages or mail or save it to another album in our photo library. So that's another really cool piece of functionality that's built into iPadOS. All right, so what we're going to do first off is name our photo album. So we're going to use that Coding at Home photo album, or Pictures at Home, I think is what I called it. So if you've created an album from the previous playground, Lights, Camera, Code, go ahead and throw that name in there, or name your album something different if you want to create a brand new album for this playground, like My Friends, for example. All right, so we're going to run our app. We've got our pictures from Pictures at Home already in there, that album. We're going to take a picture here. Let's fling it around. We don't need any more pictures of my face. Take a picture of a coffee mug for a change. There, and it's added to the album. If I tap the activity button, I have all these options to share. You can save it to books, to reminders. So this is cool. This is another step of integrating our app with the whole iPad ecosystem. So let's stop it here. All right, so the name that I gave my album appears in the album view. Check. I took a photo and it appears in the image view. And when I took that photo, it was added to my album. Perfect. Hopefully you've gotten that far too. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to move on and we're going to do a bit of work on the MyCamera class. And if you look in there, all of our code remains from before. We've got our on-slider value changed. We've got our switch camera. We've got our start function. In fact, if we try here, if we say, do you know what? Let's try, before we change our code, let's try creating a MyCamera here. MyCamera. And we'll use the plain initializer. Let's try this out. If we hit run my code, well, you might have guessed that we're going to have problems. because we have a couple errors here. So if we tap on it, we have an error that says value of type MyCamera has no member photo taken. So that's that output that the instructions here were referring to. We need that photo taken property. Same thing here. We have a reference to camera.photo taken, and we need to connect it to the album view image input. Now we've done this connecting before, so we were roughly familiar with it. So this is what we've got to add. We've got to add a property called photo taken. So let's go to the next page here and find out how to do that. Okay, so as it says, as we saw from the red dot, we've got to add this photo taken output. And if we tap on the output, we'll see what that means. And it basically is something that can send event notifications when something happens in the component. There's a lot of complexity hidden in there, but hopefully we'll make this relatively painless. This is a really big thing to be able to do, to be able to send these messages around from your own classes. All right, so let's go open the MyCamera file. We've got that open. We're on a roll. This is the code that we're going to add. So we're going to add this output to the top here. Now, because we're going to use it in the MyApp class, we have to make it public. Because remember, if we mark something as public, then it can be used from other files. So let's go do that. Let's start typing out public. And actually, there's the autocomplete. Hits it. Autocomplete. We're going to create it. It's going to be a variable. So we're going to hit var. And then it gives us the name and the value to fill in. So we're going to call it photo taken. And the value is going to be this output with these weird brackets, image in the middle, and then it looks like parentheses for an initializer. So let's try that out. Output. Now we have to go get one of these. A less than symbol. So less than, and we're going to type in image. And then we're going to close that with a greater than symbol. And then we'll use the parentheses. So there's a whole mess of stuff going on behind here with this weird syntax. You can take it on faith that this is just going to work, because it is going to work. But some of it might look familiar too. This looks like a type, this image reference here, which it is. It's telling us that, hey, there's going to be a certain type of output and it's wrapping an image. And this parentheses here looks like an initializer, right? So we're initializing an output that's going to hold an image for us. Basically is what that means. If you follow on and we manage to get to the app development with Swift curriculum, we'll introduce more of these concepts and explain these in a lot more detail. But this is kind of enough to get started with for now. And you kind of can roughly guess at what's going on there with our knowledge of types and our knowledge of initializers so far. Okay, so after creating the output, we need to notify any of its connected inputs whenever we take a photo. All right. So we're going to write a function that takes an image parameter and notifies the inputs connected to the photo taken output. All right, well, let's see. So we're going to write the following code. There should be a comment that says notify inputs function. So let's go down to the bottom. Notice we haven't had to do anything in the initializer here with this photo taken. There we go, notify inputs function. So what we're going to do down here is we're going to write a new function. So we're going to start typing in func. We're going to use autocomplete to fill out the syntax of the function for us. We're going to call it on photo taken. We're going to add a parameter. Now you may have missed this yesterday, which is cool. It happened very fast. But the easiest way to add a parameter, instead of trying to hit in between those two parentheses with your finger or dragging or anything, if you tap on this brace here, or even this brace, the whole function should turn blue. And it should give you some options to add a return type or add a parameter. So what we want to do is we want to add a parameter. And now we can call this one image. And the parameter is going to be of type image. And now what we do with this is we tell this photo taken property to notify inputs, and we pass it an image. So let's do that. So we're going to find photo taken. Another thing to note that you may not have realized is that this autocomplete bar is super handy, not always in alphabetical order. Sometimes the hints try to prioritize which items you're more likely to tap on. So that's why let, var, if, for, while, none of that's in alphabetical order. If we scroll through here, we're looking for photo taken. So we'll do photo taken dot notify inputs. And we'll pass in the image that was passed into us. And there's a note here. What does image mean? And it's just the parameter. We've done that when we covered functions with parameters way back in Everyone Can Code Puzzles. So this is the photo we've taken. So now what we're going to do is we're going to call this onPhotoTaken function whenever the camera view takes a photo. Because right now, even though we have it hooked up and we have a property defined now, our red dot disappeared. If I hit and my camera's up and running, if I hit the shutter button, I'm still not seeing my photo show up in the image view or in my here. And let's take a different photo. Let's take a photo of the microphone. It's not showing up in the image view or the photo album. It's because we have to still finish wiring this up so that the photo taken gets populated when we actually take a photo. So what we can do is, I love these diagrams. Again, we can tap on this little dot here. So that's the camera view. We're going to take the photo. So when we're going to get a message saying to call onPhotoTaken from the camera view. And the camera view's photo taken output connects to the onPhotoTaken function. The camera is going to call this function when it takes a photo. The function then notifies the inputs connected to the camera's photo taken output that there is a new photo image. My God, what does that all mean? Well, let's take a look. So basically what we have to do is we have to make a connection to send those images. When we hit that shutter button and we tell it to take a photo, remember we did do that here. We connected our shutter button up to the camera view, and the camera view has this trigger property. When that trigger property gets called, it takes a photo and it puts it in this photo taken property. So what we want to do is we want to connect that photo taken property to this onPhotoTaken function that we just wrote. So let's do that. And it mentions, write the following code at the bottom of this section inside the MyCamera initializer. We don't want to write this down here because that's too late. It won't get called when we create our MyCamera instance. So we're going to go back up to connect the components. And our last bit of connecting we need to do is we're going to say camera view dot, oh, and I lost my autocomplete again, dot photo taken dot connect. And here, I'm going to actually navigate away and come back so I can get my autocomplete back. I'm going to go back down to connect my components. Remember, I left off here. I did connect. Oop. I did that one. Here we do. This is where we're connecting the function. Connect to, oops. Here, we're going to pick this one from autocomplete. Now, you'll notice that there are two different ones here. And you may be thinking, which one do I pick? Well, it doesn't really matter because the signature is kind of the same. We have the connect, we have the open parentheses, we have a to label, and we have two different types. This looks really crazy and a bit funky, but that's just a type, really. And it's telling me that, hey, you can pass in a function that takes an image. And that's all that means. In this case, it takes a variable or a type called an input that contains an image, just like our output had a type image that it contained. So I'm going to tap this one and I'm going to type in on photo taken. Now you'll notice that I tapped on the on photo taken image and it passes in the whole thing. Over here in the sample, it says on photo taken and there's no parameter, there's no parentheses. You can do it either way. Swift is smart enough to say, oh yeah, I know what function you're talking about. This is again just a syntax thing. We can leave this in here just so that you can see that if I run my code, I'm not going to get any red dots. Everything runs. I get, here, we'll take a picture out the window. Cool. And we're all hooked up. I could do the same thing now if I were to copy exactly what's written here, which is on photo taken without this image parameter. I'll run it. I can go looking out the window again. I'll look out slightly differently so I get a different photo. And there, I've got a second photo using the different syntax of writing on photo taken. So when you're using that autocomplete bar, it's super handy. Probably the best way to go more often than not, even over tapping on this and dragging it over. Because it really tries to help you format your code in the right way. All right, cool. So we've got it all hooked up. Now we can use it. Now I jumped the gun a little bit and I changed the camera variable over to a MyCamera kind of early. Well, we tested that we ran the code and pressing the shutter button takes a photo and sends it to the image view. And it also takes a photo and adds the photo to the photo album. And that's all done in MyApp here. Remember, so we added the components, we started the camera, we styled the buttons and everything. And we did the work here. This isn't just magic. Just because I hooked up that on photo taken function of mine to the photo taken property of the camera view doesn't mean that that's it, I'm done. This also did a bit of work. There was a bit of code written in MyApp already to connect this MyCamera instance. So this is the MyCamera class, the one that we created there. It took its photo taken property and connected it to the image view input. So when this changed, it dumped it into the image view. And the same thing when it changed, it also dumped it into the album view. So that's a lot for today. We're going to end here. If you want to keep playing around with this, there's some more instructions here as well, like changing the camera position or size or checking, seeing why there might be no camera. We're going to go over that stuff again tomorrow because this is a lot of material that we just covered and I don't want to fry your brains today. Other days we're fine with. But what we'll do is we'll walk through this MyApp class again a little bit tomorrow. Or actually, sorry, not tomorrow, Monday, because tomorrow, of course, is the Hello Byte look back session. So sign up if you haven't signed up already. And this is a lot of code for today. And the really exciting thing about this is that now you've got a real fully functioning app. You've written this camera that's amazing. You've got your own shape, your own mask to it. It's unreal. We've output the pictures that we take into this image view and into our photo album. We can now share these things. If I tap on a photo over here, I can share it to somebody. This is amazing. This is a huge amount of work and a really full-featured app. So we're going to come back to this tomorrow. We're going to walk through the MyApp class and look at all these things that are just sort of look like they're magically hooked up, but that we've actually done a lot of work to hook up ourselves. And we'll keep playing around with this. There's a few other little tweaks we can do in this playground, and then we'll take a look at some app prototyping next week in Keynote. All right, I hope you enjoyed today's session. I'll see you again. If you're coming to the beginner session, I'll see you tomorrow. If not, I'll see you on Monday. And happy coding.